Hello, welcome back to the True Crime Guys podcast. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Michael.
How's everybody doing? All right, man. Back in the studio.
Back for another freebie.
Yeah, freeloader. Oh, yeah. Last week was Patreon, so those of you
Yeah.
who didn't get to hear the Missoula Mauler Wayne Nance with one of the most satisfying ends in any podcast we've ever done.
Maybe the most satisfying ending we've
It
had
has to be.
so far.
It has to be. This one, though, would give
Right?
it a run for its money in such a different way. But, man, this is a satisfying end to this case.
Very. Yeah, very satisfying.
I don't care.
Well.
I don't care what the documentaries say about Richard Speck's time in prison. He was not having the time of his life when he was on
he was not.
hormones. And like that video is one of the most bizarre. There's a video of this week's subject, Richard Speck, in prison in his final years. And yeah, he's not having fun. I'm sorry. I don't care what they say. He can sit there and smile and say, yeah, I love getting banged by dudes and all that. No,
Yeah.
he was not having a good time.
That was obvious. Obvious. And if you did enjoy it, why didn't you do it when you were out of prison?
Exactly. He was doing what he had to do to survive in there, but he was in his own form of hell, I think.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
That's why he was so drugged up and, making his own alcohol and doing the coke and all that shit just to I don't know, just to survive it mentally, I guess.
Well, that video, aside from all that disturbing shit, that video gave a lot of insight into how easy it is for these guys to have this life in prison. Like, yeah, Richard Speck is having kind of a rough life, but these guys who are taking advantage of him seem like they're living it up.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. That's just what it seems to me. It seems like those guys on the other side are really not being punished. I think they're kings in there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
That's the irony of it, is that he ended up being taken advantage of, like the women that he had done that to. It was so creepy. But it was this amazing form of karma that came back around at him. Is that he had to have a little bit of taste of what he was doing.
Well, let me ask you this though, dude. Do you think a little bit of it was him taking the responsibility and punishing himself? Do you think any of that could be true?
I don't know. It's hard to get in the head of this guy.
Huh?
It's hard to get into the head of this guy. I don't know what was going on with him.
It is, but I mean, why not take your own life? He already tried a few times. He should. I mean, I think he could do it if he really wanted to.
You're saying he may have had remorse for what he had done, and he was punishing himself in a sense.
Yeah, it may be like, okay, the scales are even now.
Yeah.
Maybe it cleared his conscience a little bit. Maybe he is having fun now. He's just, I mean, he's been in there for what? How long? 30 years?
No, he's
been
dead
there for
now.
like 30 years, right? I know he's dead. He died in 96, right? Right before this footage was released.
Right.
But I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe he came to terms with it. And
We'll talk about this.
That's how he felt like he paid for it.
Yeah. We can have that discussion again at the end when we talk about his life in prison a little bit more at the end of the case. But
sure.
I mean, just satisfying end to this one, much like last week's Patreon episode, patreon.com/truecrimeguys, exclusive episode last week, Wayne Nance, the Missoula Mauler. Go check that out, plus all of our other audio, with 90 audio files on there, whatever it is.
Yeah, and about a third of those are Higher Thoughts, which we released a teaser last week. So
yeah, the one that I was on.
Yeah, that's right, man. It's one of my favorites. I thought that would be a good one. That's somewhat topical. I didn't want to cut you out of the mainstream. Let people hear a little bit of Higher Thoughts.
Cut me out of my own podcast, man.
Yeah, exactly. I can't do that. And plus, that was a real fun one, dude, with the Australian slang.
Yeah,
we had a blast.
Yeah, that
was
a good one.
Yeah, if you guys haven't checked that out.
So hopefully you guys like that. Give Michael some feedback on that. All right, you ready to get into this pock-faced woman-hating son of a bitch?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
How'd you feel after killing those ladies? Like I always felt. Had no feeling. Hadn't really felt sorry, but no.
25 years of humiliation and abuse.
You like being by men? Absolutely. Have you always liked being by men? Sure.
Richard Speck, he's about what you would expect. He's all walking around all cool and stuff, with a born to kill tattoo and stuff. He thinks he's so much better than you. He's so much better than you. Talking about Richard Speck. Yeah, is that the same Richard Speck? He's still walking around all cool and stuff. Well, now he's got boobs and stuff. And you guessed it, his panties are blue. You guessed it, his panties are blue. Oh, Richard Speck. Talking about that Richard Speck. He's still trying to walk around all cool. But that's real hard to do when your panties are blue. That's hard to do when your panties are blue. 'Cause then, son, so are you. Oh, Richard Speck, he's about what you would expect. He's not walking around all cool and stuff. He's more like worm food and stuff. The Speck is dead. Yeah, the Speck is dead. I mean, if you're talking about Richard Speck, of course.
All right, our case this week for you freeloaders is none other than Richard Speck. I'm surprised it's been it's taken so long for us to cover him. He's one of the bigger known names in true crime.
Right.
I wouldn't even call him really a serial killer. He's more of a spree killer, although he did have one victim one murder victim. I mean, there's other victims of just him and as a criminal, but he did murder one other person other than the infamous night in Chicago with the nurses.
Right.
So I guess you could, I don't know, would he still qualify as a serial killer at that point?
I don't know.
It wasn't three separate events.
It was
two separate events. No. So
But Jesus, it was 9 people. It's like,
I'd still call him a fucking serial killer.
yeah. I mean, I don't know.
You guys want to get all technical?
I think the one night was a rage. I think it was a rage kill.
It wasn't. It didn't remind you of Ted Bundy in Florida, the Chi Omega sorority house. I think it was.
Yes.
I forget. I think it might have been Chi. I don't remember what the sorority house was, but yeah, very similar, right? Where he just like lashed out and just attacked a bunch of women at the same time, and that were kind of vulnerable.
Right.
So
Yeah.
similar.
It was very similar to that situation. Yeah.
The book that I used to study for this was The Townhouse Massacre: The Unforgettable Crimes of Richard Speck by Ryan Green. We've featured books by Ryan Green before. Not my favorite true crime author, but he's had this one was okay. It was a decent book.
What is it? He just doesn't give enough detail, or
sometimes too much. Like he goes into the mind, like he speaks for the killer at times, and it's almost
not this
like
kind of
over the top.
author again.
You remember he was the one who did the book on the Mockingbird Hill Massacre, and it was like the entire book was in he was pretending to be the mind of the killer,
right?
And at times it was just kind of like, man, this is like you're almost sick even speaking for this person. Like,
yeah,
sounds like
right.
you're getting off on
like,
it almost, but
yeah, you're doing too good of a job.
Right. Yeah, it's creeping me out a little bit.
Well, some people might like that. That's why I wanted to clarify as to why. Some people might be
true.
like, "Oh, I'm even more interested in that book now."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd rather let the person speak for themselves as opposed to you pretending to, know what they were thinking at the time they were doing these heinous crimes.
I got you.
So Richard Benjamin Speck was born on December 6th, 1941, and if that day sounds, kind of like sets off something in your head, it's because it was the day before Pearl Harbor.
Yes, it is.
He was born in Kirkwood, Illinois, as we mentioned, the day before the Pearl Harbor attacks. And a quote from him later, he said, "The day I was born, all hell broke loose. Hasn't stopped since." He liked to give himself that bad boy image,
Yeah, it's just coincidence.
Yeah, it was coincidence.
Yeah, don't blame your stupid personality on Pearl Harbor, you bastard.
Yeah. You're not that important, dude. That was
Right.
a much bigger event than your life.
back off.
Yeah, he shared a birthday, however, with Judd Apatow and Johnny Manziel, Johnny Football.
Johnny
who,
Football.
Fizzled out in the NFL much different from what my 49ers are experiencing right now. It's a quick segue, and we have to talk about it. We have to talk about it. We talk about it every week, and now it's become a superstition of mine that if I don't talk about it on the podcast, it seems like they're going to lose almost.
That's right. That's right. And
you keep talking about it, and they keep winning, baby.
That's right. Guys, listen, if you're tired of hearing the football talk, too bad, because it means a lot to Lauren. You know, he puts a lot of work into this show.
And the offseason's almost here, and we'll stop talking about it. But, man, my team's one win away, man. It's just,
I almost talk about it.
I have to, everyone's like, I watched the NFC Championship game when they obviously won. And afterwards, everyone was looking at me. They're like, aren't you like just excited? I'm like, I have to reserve it. We've been here. We were there in 2012 and lost, from the 3-yard line. If we would have scored, we would have won with, there's like, it was as close as you could possibly come, and it was heartbreaking. So I just have to, until it's over, if we win it, I'll be probably freaking in my birthday suit running through Vegas, but otherwise I have to reserve my excitement a little bit because I've been a fan for 25 fucking years, dude. And I literally became a fan right after like the golden years, the 5 Super Bowls. 25 years I've never seen them win it.
You have suffered.
Just like, I have suffered, man. I've put in my time, and I know the Chiefs fans have suffered even more. They haven't been to a Super Bowl 50 years. I get that. Both teams are deserving, so good luck to the Chiefs as well. Shannon out there and Casey. We got a lot of Casey creepers, so good luck to you guys.
Hell yeah, good
I hope
luck,
it's a good game, but obviously I hope my team comes out on top.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah, it's a good one, right? It's a great matchup. It's like, who knows what's going to happen in this one? I can't call it. Like the Packer game, I felt like we would beat them just matchup-wise, but man, this one, who knows what the hell's going to happen?
I know it won't be, but I wish it was just like an offensive shootout.
It could be.
It's just all kinds of explosive plays just happening. Just the 49ers run game just running all over them, and then and then Pat Mahomes is throwing 60-yard passes.
Yeah, as good as the Niners defense is, it's you can't defend some of the things that Chiefs offense presents. Mahomes' cannon arm, being able to throw from any angle, and then all those freaking speedsters. It's like a track race. Yep. These are the 2 fastest teams. They actually they broke it down to like speed per play or something like that, and it was within 1 decimal. It was like average speed per play. We were within 1 decimal. Number 1 in the league and number 2 in the league. So it's the 2 fastest teams. Speed matters. But yeah, that's enough football talk. It should be a crazy matchup, and we'll probably talk about it again next week because are we recording on Super Bowl Sunday that morning?
I don't know, man. We might have to record a different day.
It's not. I mean, the game's not till 3:30 in the afternoon, and we record early in the morning, so I don't see why not.
Okay, well that's true. Wait, 3:30 your time?
Yeah, 3:30.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because it's always at night here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's at 6:30. Okay, yeah, I have plenty of time.
Yeah, so I'm sure you'll have to hear us talk about it one more time, and then after that, it'll start to die down because it'll be the off season. So
right.
Then you'll have the draft in Las Vegas this year.
No, we're not talking about the draft on here. We want people to keep listening. Yeah.
Wait for my mock draft like Mel Kiper and Todd McShay.
Oh my god.
All right, back to Richard Speck.
Yeah, that's what we're doing this week. Here we go.
Yeah, so we mentioned born December 6, 1941. He was born into a large religious family where he was the 7th of 8 children. So,
wow,
one of the last 2 babies of the family.
I was about to say one of the last 2, and then his older siblings were much older, right? There was kind of a gap in between him, and then he had one more sister that was around his age, and then the others were practically adults.
Yeah, so it was him and his younger sister that were born in 1943, and they were much younger than their 4 older sisters and 2 older brothers. So he was one of 2 babies. Him and his younger sister were the babies, and the rest of the kids were much older, as you had mentioned. Yeah,
and then obviously your parents would be much older. I think that plays a big role,
right?
I think that played a big role in the way he turned out. Yeah, in his psyche, and also just the discipline. And just the discipline aspect, the older you get, the more tired you get. I mean, it's just, I know kids who were like raised by their grandparents, and as soon as they were able to, they went nuts. And also, I think the older you get, the softer you get too. Maybe he was he had a really close relationship with his father, which unfortunately came to an end when he was still really young. Right.
That seemed to have a really immense effect on him. His parents were Benjamin Franklin Speck and Margaret Carbo Speck. I don't know what her middle name is. Speck and his younger sister, as we mentioned, they were much younger than the rest of the siblings. His father worked as a packer at Western Stoneware in Monmouth and had previously worked as a farmer and logger. He was a hardworking guy, and he had a special relationship with young Richard. His youngest son I think he saw that Richard needed kind of like special attention. He always kind of did.
Right.
He was just very he was kind of like a baby, much older than he should have been almost.
But did he need special attention, or was it he was like, this is my last son? This is
Maybe.
my
That's
last
what I was going to say.
shot
Like,
at it.
maybe
you know
his
what I mean?
father got softer as he got older. You know,
Yeah.
you see like my dad, seeing him with my kids, it's amazing. It's different. I think it's a lot different than the way I think he treats my grandkids a lot different than he treated me when I was younger. Maybe he was a little
absolutely.
bit harder on me because he was younger himself, and but now he just appreciates every second with my kids. You know, so maybe his father being a lot older, he just knew this was the last one he was going to have, and really had a special. They would go fishing together, just him and Richard. Even with all those kids,
Yeah.
just him and his dad would go out, and it meant a lot to young Richard.
Exactly.
However, as close as he was, his father ended up dying in 1947 from a heart attack at the age of 53 when Richard was only 6 years old. And as we said, this had a tremendous effect on him, especially considering who ended up replacing him, which was a polar opposite person. He would end up having just a complete douchebag of a stepfather, which just put him on a path. I think it was kind of nature and nurture. I think more nurture with him, actually. I don't know. What did you think after studying this?
Yeah, I would say nurture from this point on. I feel like if his dad
Right.
doesn't die this early, maybe if his dad makes it to his more formative years, makes it till where he's a teenager, maybe, or into the 20s, I think I think he's better equipped to handle that tragedy in his life. But I think the fact that his dad died so early and then
I
replaced
think
by a
there's like
horrible role model.
there's like a series of events that just made him progressively angrier.
Right.
Young man, you know, like just that nothing was going his way in his own eyes, like his father dying, and then it just seemed like physically he was, you know, kind of picked on and tormented a little bit. He, you know, had really severe acne and had to wear glasses. He was supposed to wear glasses, but he refused to because he was embarrassed about it. So he was like walking around almost blind all the time.
Right.
And also his father had been much more lighthearted and kind of was like the fun person in the house. And his mother was always very strict and very serious and very religious. Like his father got reprimanded by his mother at one point for going to a fish fry and having one beer. He had a beer, and his wife, Richard's mother, never let him hear the end of it for that.
Yeah.
There was no smoking, no drinking, no sinning, essentially.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
So that the fun influence of his father was gone now with his death, and it was, you know, just a not fun household to be in.
You know, he
However,
never had a good
Go ahead.
relationship with his mom. You know what I mean? Like
No.
when he was younger, she was the disciplinarian, and then later in life, it was kind of like she was all he had, so
babied
she
him, right?
connected to him. And then he had an unhealthy relationship where he put her up on this huge pedestal. It was like the complete opposite. But neither
Yeah, and she
neither
always also babied him too. She always like bailed him out of anything, even though she wasn't very particularly nice to him
right.
all of his life. But like when it came down to it, he was getting in so much trouble as a teen and as an adult. And every time he would get arrested, she would come bail him out. And like, yeah, you're right. He put her up on this pedestal.
Right. But here's what I find funny. No matter which end of the spectrum he viewed his mother, he still had a negative outlook towards women. It's like that
Oh, yeah.
that part makes me feel like maybe he's just a bad apple. Because
Yeah.
it's like his mother went one complete way. Don't let him do anything, discipline him. I understand. First mistake is she should have been in the gray area. I get it. But I'm just saying, for him to hate women on both ends, that strikes as like a deeper issue to me. Does that make sense?
There was no gray area with women. It was either they were like saintly, like basically like a virgin, or they were a whore if they ever had any sex at all.
Right.
It was a very almost evangelical, like super religious, like look at it, like your body is a tomb, you know, or
A temple.
God forbid
Right.
you enjoy sex at all, then you're just this whore.
Exactly. And obviously
So-
these point of views came from his mother. I mean, this has got to be things you're hearing from your mother.
Yeah, they had to have been, right. He got it somewhere, and also his douchebag stepfather that we got it from was just like polar opposite to everything he'd been taught and raised by, and his mother is with this guy, and it's just kind of like what the.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll get into that. But however, at home when he was younger, his older sisters were babying him, and he became kind of stuck in like this very juvenile stage following his father's death. There's a story from his teacher when he's in elementary school following his father's death. Some other students witnessed him sitting on his teacher's lap, a female teacher, and when they asked her, you know, like why is Richard sitting on your lap like that? She basically said like Richard, is being treated like a baby because he is a big baby. Essentially, he like wasn't progressing like the other children. He was still stuck in like a baby stage for a while.
He reverted though. He was doing fine, right?
Yeah.
And then after his dad's death, he reverted. I think that's kind of a normal response for a lot of kids. I think a lot of kids have that response.
Yeah.
Because it's like they almost want to turn back the clock. I'm like, whoa. When I was like this, he was still here. And it's just, I know it sounds very basic, but I think that's, I don't think that's really a red flag at that point. I know kids were making fun of him, and it's fun to make fun of him now because he turned out to be a horrible person. But, yeah,
I think that is a natural response for sure.
Yeah.
A couple of years later, Speck's religious, teetotaling mother met and fell in love with a traveling insurance salesman from Texas, Carl August Rudolph Lindbergh. So this Carl Lindbergh, whom she met on a train trip to Chicago, was a hard-drinking and peg-legged with a 25-year criminal record that started with forgery and included several arrests for drunk driving, and in every respect was the opposite of Richard's sober, hardworking father. So this...
Dude, I could have told you that when you said he was a traveling insurance salesman. When you said that, I was like, yeah, this dude is a shady character. This is some bullshit.
He fits the bill for sure.
Right. He's perfect.
Fast-talking, bullshitting, drinking, spitting, fucking peg-legged douchebag.
Yeah.
And this is who his mother falls for. After, like, Speck had his father, like, up here, like, so high. He thought of him in the highest regard. And then his mother, I think he still kind of thought of in that way. And then she met this guy, and it's just like, what are you thinking? This guy is the complete opposite of everything we stand for. But the smooth talking got to her, I guess. I don't know.
And like you said, man, you get softer. Even religious people get softer, maybe compromise a little more. Now, not all. I'm not saying all. Some people, they really dig them roots in. But some people get softer, man. Maybe she started to feel differently, or she just didn't have the energy to fight it.
Yeah, or maybe she just didn't really know where to go after her husband, and then this guy came to her, and it was just kind of like easy, like, hey, he's showing me attention. And instead of her having to go out and find a new man, it kind of just fell in her lap. And
she got a discount on insurance. So,
right, she saved 10% by switching over to Lindbergh.
Right. She didn't even know about Geico at the time. But she's like, oh, shit.
If only she had known, lives could have been saved. Geico could have saved lives.
Oh, dang.
She'd have married the little gecko. Richard might have had a decent influence, father figure, and maybe he would have identified it as a little lizard and never would have killed any women.
Wow. That's right.
Could have changed everything. So Speck's mother would marry Lindbergh on May 10th, 1950 in Palo Pinto, Texas. Sorry to the Texas people if I mispronounce your city. Richard would then be moved to Texas from Illinois with his mother and new stepfather shortly before starting the third grade. So now he's taken a big move. He suffered considerable abuse at the hands of his drunken stepfather, and Speck's childhood was marked by juvenile delinquency and alcohol abuse, which soon led to petty crimes. So his stepfather, like, he was trying to take over the father figure for all these kids, and it was kind of working for the other kids, but Richard just wasn't having it. He was not willing or ready to move on from his father. Like you said, I think he just kind of wanted to turn back time and go back to that.
Well,
and now this douchebag's there trying to act like his dad, and he just fought it the whole way, which made it to the point where Lindbergh was like, fuck this kid, and started pestering him, pecking at him, and basically verbally abusing him all the time.
Well, maybe, if all the other kids got along with him, maybe it was just because Richard wasn't receiving any favoritism from this guy. Maybe that dude was just being fair and taking care of everybody the same and going fishing with everybody the same. And Richard was like, oh, I miss my dad. He only loved me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Richard, being young and frail, was an easy target for this drunk douchebag to, the kid's not responding. That's kind of something what you have to expect as a new stepfather. It's like the kid's not going to right away just assume you're my new dad. You got to ease him along, and he was doing the opposite. He was making it worse by verbally abusing this young child.
Right. Yeah, that there's never an excuse for that. You're right.
Right. After a year in Santo, Speck moved with his mother, stepfather, and sister Carolyn to the East Dallas section of Dallas, Texas, living at 10 addresses in poor neighborhoods over the next dozen years. So now they're jumping around all these poor neighborhoods. Richard loathed his often drunk and frequently absent stepfather, who psychologically abused him with insults and threats. Speck at this point was a poor student who needed glasses for reading but refused to wear them. He struggled through Dallas public schools from 4th to 8th grade, repeating 8th grade in part because he refused to speak in class because of a lifelong fear of people staring at him. So yeah, he was very insecure, and he had this fear of, speaking in front of any crowds, or, he's basically just wanted to kind of disappear into the background, but he was forced to be at the forefront sometimes, which he just would rather flunk out of school than do that. It didn't help that he also had severe acne as a teenager and would end up being pock-faced forever as a result of the severe acne.
Man, yeah, that acne can really ruin you, man. That stuff's not treated right. I can't.
I had it pretty bad. It was
I don't
brutal.
understand why it's still. I don't really see any scars on your face though. You didn't have it like his.
No, I mean, there's levels, but I definitely had it to where it was you didn't want to leave the house,
Really?
But I think, oh yeah, no, I had
What
it
did
real
you do
bad in
for
my
it?
probably I tried everything proactive. I even tried. I even went to the doctor and was on medication for a bit, which has
dried
other
your skin out and everything
downsides
else
as well.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes there's not anything you can do other than just hope that it goes away with age. In my case, it did, thankfully, and I didn't have any pox in the face to, kind of. I was able to just fully move on and forget about that chapter. But when I think back, yeah, it was brutal, man.
Damn. Yeah, my best friend, he struggled with it, and I remember his grandmother taking him to the doctor, dermatologist, almost every month. Man, he had a new medication. He's like, "Oh, I got to put this on," and it never got any better. It just finally went away.
Yeah.
It just went away.
Proactive, shout out to Proactive. Actually, did help, but there's only it didn't like clear it up completely, but it definitely helped. If you were consistent with that.
Yeah.
So
I'd imagine it's like Rogaine. You know what I mean? Something you have to keep on using until
it's only going to do so
until
much.
your body changes, and then that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
In autumn of 1957, Richard started 9th grade at Crozier Technical High School, but failed every subject and did not return for the second semester in January 1958, effectively dropping out just after his 16th birthday. So he drops out of high school and never returns to school following that. He had begun drinking alcohol at age 12, and by 15, he was getting drunk almost every day. And that was the one perk to his douchebag stepfather, Lindbergh, was that he had a full cabinet of liquor, and that's when
Not anymore.
Richard started really experimenting. Yeah, exactly. Did you ever do that? Like, I don't know if I know your parents are religious. I don't know if they had alcohol in the house, but the old steal some vodka and pour some water in the bottle type of thing.
The old take a swig. Yeah. I tried it at a friend's house.
Yeah. I did it at my parents' and some friends' houses a few times where it was.
Yeah, it was.
The liquor cabinet's getting a little more watered down day by day type of thing.
It was Jack Daniel's No. 7, first liquor I tasted.
There you go.
Yeah.
You got to be careful with the darker liquors, though. It's kind of hard to find another liquid to replace it with without the color changing. Vodka's perfect for that. You just pour some water in that shit.
Yeah. But a shot, I mean, they're not going to notice that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Unless you didn't know, they're starting to mark a little line where the liquor is, kind of like when you mark your kid's height.
Yeah.
All of a sudden the line's above the liquid. And you're like, all right.
Yeah, I should have.
That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get him with that.
Yeah, you should do that. You should know where that liquor is, man. Or you could just lock it up,
Yep. Yeah, that's true. That always works. Keep your guns and your liquor locked up, people, like proper, to where the kids can't get into it.
That's right.
So his first arrest would be in 1955 at age 13 for trespassing. This was followed by dozens of other arrests for misdemeanors over the next 8 years. He adopted a bad boy image and never looked back. He even had the phrase "born to raise hell" tattooed on his forearm, which would help actually identify him.
No turning back now, huh?
Get him caught. Yeah. Hey, you're committing to that lifestyle,
boys
man.
for life
it's like
now.
When rappers get tattooed on their face. That's a full commit, man. You got to be a rapper now. You're not getting a day job.
That's right. Hey, that's why a lot of them did it. That's why a lot of guys in the NBA did that too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're like committing to that lifestyle only. There's no going back to a 9 to 5.
Yeah. There was a baseball player. What was his
respect
name?
that.
He struggled with drug addiction a lot. His name was Josh. He's got a super cool story though. Like the dude was like turned down. He was like he was like the top prospected player in the nation at one time, and then just got terribly hooked on. I think it was Josh Hamilton, but he he got flames tattooed like from his wrist, like all the way up both arms, and he was like, "I'm only gonna play baseball with these arms." He just like quit the damn drug because he did a lot of it to cover up marks and stuff. I'd imagine.
Yeah.
But
Well,
crazy stories, dude.
arms are more chill. Like you can always wear a long sleeve. You could still have a day job, but the tattoos on the face, man, rappers are full commit to that.
Yeah. Well, I think he's got them like up his neck. It's like it's all the way up the neck.
Yeah, the next.
When you start getting to the
risky.
neck, I mean, you can't wear a turtleneck every day. You shouldn't wear it ever, but you certainly can't wear it every day.
I was gonna say I don't really recommend turtlenecks, period. But unless you're out, you're out like sledding in the snow or something.
Even then, dude, get a scarf or just put a fucking hood on.
Yeah.
No, to get.
Yeah, you're right.
Don't go the turtleneck route.
Yeah. You don't want to be known as the turtleneck guy. Oh, you know that guy, turtleneck guy.
And then God forbid there's
an old
another guy
patch
wearing a turtleneck there while you're there. It's like now you're not even, hipster trendy.
Right.
It's just the worst.
I feel like soul patch and turtleneck, they're both in the same category. And if you're rocking the soul patch and the turtleneck, man,
Yeah.
you got a thing.
What
going
about
there.
some thick frame glasses to go with it, man? Some dark frames.
Now we're really drawing a picture
That'll set
here.
it off right there.
That's your next painting.
Okay.
Draw a very, very prestigious man with a soul patch, big rim glasses, and a turtleneck.
Yes. Okay. I'll get right on that.
Call it Flight of the Duke.
I'll get right on it.
All right. So Speck would end up getting a job as a laborer for the 7-Up Bottling Company of Dallas and maintained it for almost 3 years, from August 24th, 1960 to July 19th, 1963. During this time working as a laborer for the 7-Up Bottling Company, he met a 15-year-old in 1961 named Shirley Annette Malone. He was at the Texas State Fair. She became pregnant after 3 weeks of dating him. So he was an adult at this point, and she was 15. He was, what was he, like 20 years old, something like
Right.
that. And the parents even knew about their relationship. Like he was there, but he seemed so, as we'd mentioned, he still seemed so much younger than his age just because of his mentality and everything. He'd never really fully grown to adulthood yet, mentally.
Right.
And so, like, even her parents were okay with them dating at first. They thought it was kind of cute, except they were sneaking off to, like, an abandoned house at night and getting it on all the time. And, of course, it was a matter of time before she became pregnant. And when they told each other's parents, them both being religious on both ends, they pressured them. And this is, the early 60s, so they were immediately pressured to get married.
And he was
before.
He was like 19, 20 right here. So that's not really that crazy for early 60s. 19
No,
and 15,
that's-
that's pretty normal for that time period.
That's not, no. I was 18 and my wife was 16 when we met. So, I mean, it's like really not that far
2
off.
years is nothing. There's, I'd
Right.
say most couples have 2+ years between them, like long-term couples.
Yeah.
Because it just takes guys longer to mature.
That being said, as far as the law concerns, still be careful for a couple years until you're both 18. Like,
Agreed.
no sexting or none of that
Agreed.
shit. Just word of advice to any young people listening. You can still get charges for basically child porn if you have a 16-year-old's nude pictures. Even if you're 17, you're 16, you're both 16. We've heard stories about this.
Listen, yeah.
It's a different time now.
That's right. You shouldn't even put yourself in the situation because you're just one bad breakup away and then a he said, she said argument from being fucked for life.
If their parents don't fuck around and they don't like you, they can really screw your life
That's right.
up.
They may like you now, but I don't mean they're going to like you later.
Exactly. So, they were, after being pressured by their families following the pregnancy news, Shirley married Speck on January 19th, 1962. All seemed kind of peachy. She really liked him still. She moved in with Richard, his mother, and his sister Carolyn, and Carolyn's husband as well. So they're all living together. Speck's mother and stepfather had separated at this point. So good old douchebag Lindbergh had moved off to California, started a new family, and sent a postcard with the news of his new life and family in California.
That was nice of him.
At least he did that.
That was real.
Fucking traveling insurance.
Right.
douche.
Way to keep in touch.
Just probably had families all over the country.
I'm telling you.
Come on, Shirley, you should have known
It's
better.
bullshit. It's all a scam.
Right. Insurance is a scam. That's the irony, isn't it?
exactly. It's the biggest scam.
Richard stopped using the name Richard Franklin Lindbergh at this point. He didn't want to keep that douchebag's last name. So when he got married and began using the name Richard Franklin Speck, went back to his father's name. his deceased father. During the pregnancy, if Shirley wasn't feeling up to having sex, this is when she learned about who the real Richard Speck was. Everything seemed fine, but however, one night she finally turned him down for sex when he came home late, and he essentially said, well, that's too bad, and held her down and beat her up and had sex with her. And at that point, after that, she grew to despise him following this, and their relationship was never the same. He was, as we mentioned, he had a particular outlook on women, and they were either whores or they were saints. And the fact that she turned him down, he got this image that she was now a whore. I don't understand it at all, but
he probably assumed that she was cheating on him. I'm pretty sure he did at some point, right? He started getting real paranoid about that.
He probably made that shit up to make himself look like the good guy.
Definitely.
She's a cheating whore, that type of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
When Speck's daughter, Robbie Lynn, was born on July 5th, 1962, his wife did not know where Speck was. He was serving a 22-day jail sentence for disturbing the peace in McKinney, Texas, after a drunken melee. That was a pretty common way for him to get locked up, is he would get drunk, start mouthing off and trying to fight people.
Right.
Sometimes he would stab them. He always had a big knife on him. He's not the type of guy you really wanted to get into it with at a bar, not because he was tough by any means. I mean,
he was dirty.
Fisticuffs when it comes down to it. Yeah, he fought dirty, so dirty. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, he bite you. He just seemed like he'd bite you, scratch you, whatever. He's a little guy, skinny dude, but he was always packing a big knife, and he was not afraid to use it. So, yeah, don't fight people in the bar no matter how tough they look. You don't really know what's going to happen, and you might end up in jail. You don't want that. So
or worse.
Right. Yeah, getting shanked. In July 1963, Speck was caught having forged and cashed a coworker's check for $44, and also having burglarized a grocery store, stealing cigarettes, beer, and $3 in cash. He went
what a makeout.
It was just a rookie move as a young criminal, still learning the way things go, because he broke into this grocery store hoping to raid all the cash, raid the cash register. But, they're not leaving a bunch of cash in their register overnight. They cash that shit out, and it goes in either the safe or whatever.
Also,
so they had $3 in cash in the register, and so he just grabbed like a pack of cigarettes and was like, fuck.
Also, how much cash would a convenience store have in 1963? I mean, the average price of things is what, like 5 cents? Like, what are you getting? I mean, $3 in cash is like $50 probably now.
Yeah, I guess. He was probably hoping for like $20 in cash, which he could have bought a house.
Right, exactly. Put a good down payment down. Yeah, I got you.
The 21-year-old Richard was convicted of forgery and burglary and sentenced to 3 years in prison. So when he returned to work, they pretty much knew that he had stolen that coworker's check. Someone saw him lift it that prior Friday, right. And when it was actually cashed, with his name and whatnot, they were just basically waiting for him on Monday when he came in. So yeah, he would end up getting sentenced to 3 years. He would be paroled after serving 16 months in the Texas State Penitentiary in Huntsville, Texas. 1 week after his parole, on January 9th, 1965, at 2:20 a.m., Speck was drunk and acting on an impulse and wielding a large carving knife. Walking through a parking lot, he attacked a woman in the parking lot of her apartment building. He fled, however, when the woman screamed. So he didn't really think this out. He just kind of was like walking around, pissed off, drunk, and just an opportunity arose when he saw this attractive woman walking through the parking lot. And when she got in her car, he came up to her with the knife, and she just had the right impulse to just scream bloody murder, and everyone started looking out their windows of the apartment complex and everything, and he froze like he did back in elementary school when he had to speak in front of the class and just ran off.
Even being drunk, he still froze?
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. He didn't
even
really,
with liquid courage.
He was. I'm guessing he was hoping she was just gonna be so afraid of the knife that she would just freeze. And we've talked about it numerous times. A lot of times that makes you the perfect victim if you don't fight back or make any sound or anything. That's what they want. They want complete control.
Right. And then on the other hand,
throw a curveball.
And then on the other hand, Kitty Genevieve's happened, and she did the same thing, which is so crazy.
That's true, but that's the one-off. That's why we covered
Absolutely.
that case, because that was so rare.
Very true.
The bystander effect and all that. So the woman screamed. He fled. The police arrived within minutes, and shortly thereafter apprehended Speck a few blocks away. He was still wandering around drunk. They caught him. He would end up being convicted of aggravated assault and given a 16-month sentence to run concurrently with a parole violation sentence. and returned to prison in Huntsville. But however, they fucked up on this one due to an error. So he had gotten released on the prior sentence for the check forgery. He had gotten released like halfway through his sentence,
Right.
remember? And they didn't do the proper filing of his paperwork or whatever on that release. And so when he went back for this, they released him on the date that he was supposed to be released for the check forgery.
Oh my God! I
as
see
if
what
he
you're
had
saying.
served his full sentence. Yeah, so he got out after just 6 months for this aggravated assault when he should have been serving 16 months. And he was released on July 2nd, 1965. So they really screwed up.
Hell yeah, they did.
After his release, from prison, Speck worked for 3 months as a driver for the Patterson Meat Company, where he had 6 accidents with his truck before he was finally fired for failing to show up for work.
Well, listen,
Can you
listen.
imagine?
You can have
Can
all
you
the
fucking
accidents
imagine?
you want.
This is the company,
as long
bro.
as you show up. That's what I just learned.
That is the company to work for, dude. Holy shit.
6 accidents, and then they fired him because he didn't show up.
That's 2 accidents a month. He was there for 3 months. 6 accidents. And they're like, we just don't like your attendance record. Your driving is phenomenal.
Listen, Richard, we can repaint the truck again, but no call, no show, buddy. We can't deal with it.
Yeah.
You're out of sick time.
It's like, what do you got to do to get fired from the Patterson Meat Company, man? I don't know if they still exist, but I'm going to go apply for a job. Jeez.
Seriously. And then I'm just going to show up whenever I want.
Right? I mean, the job that we worked together at that I still am at, you imagine 6 accidents. I mean, you wouldn't make it that far.
Hell no.
After 1 month, if you had 3,
Dude, depending on how your first one was, how severe, it could be 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In December 1965, he moved in with a 29-year-old divorced woman, an ex-professional wrestler who was a bartender at his favorite bar, Guinea's Lounge, and she needed someone to babysit her 3 children. In January 1966, she kind of used him. He was infatuated with her, and
She was a wrestler?
basically always wanted to hook up. I guess
That's
so.
badass.
Ex-professional wrestler, right? So he always wanted to hook up with her, and she finally gave him the time of day when he offered to babysit her kids. And so he would babysit her kids, and then when she got home, she would throw him a bone.
Right, as long as he had
hook
dinner
up
on the
with him.
table, that bitch.
Right. Just like holding him down. I picture her big old fucking, she had traps, and she's just like.
That's probably when he started taking hormones, if he's honest with himself.
She comes
sorry.
home, dinner better be
nothing
hot,
wrong
and
with
then
that.
she
I
takes.
wasn't making a joke
No,
on that
of course
lifestyle.
not. No, of course not. It's hey, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody teach their own. That's how we feel. In January 1966, Speck's wife filed for divorce. That same month, Speck stabbed another man in a fight at Guinea's Lounge. This one, he was charged with aggravated assault again, but a defense. This is what's amazing about him is the privilege that's going on here. Is like how many times he should have been locked away for much longer, but he just kept giving breaks, by either his mom kind of talking to the judge and talking him down, like he's a nice boy. And it's like, why does he keep stabbing everybody and pulling knives on women and like?
Yeah, well, there's always a different scenario. I'm sure he has a different excuse. Like in this, and also it's 1966. Don't forget about that. But he could be like, "Hey, that's my gal." He was talking to my gal. I don't know why I'm going 40s.
Yeah,
but
it was a crime of passion there, guy.
Oh, is she funny, huh? You ought to see how funny I am.
Right. Yeah, exactly. A defense attorney hired by his mother was able to get the charge reduced to disturbing the peace. Disturbing the peace after he stabbed a man in a bar.
Well, he disturbed his peace, that's for sure.
The peace was disturbed, for sure. But, I mean, it goes,
Peace was so damn disturbed.
It's pretty incredible how many times he got off with a slap on the wrist. Time after time. He would end up being fined $10 and jailed for 3 days for the disturbing the peace. And, of course, he decided he just wasn't going to pay the $10 fine either. So on March 5th, 1966, he bought a 12-year-old car. The following evening, he burglarized a grocery store, stole 70 cartons of cigarettes, and sold them out of the trunk of his car in the grocery store's parking lot and then abandoned the car. So wait, did he really sell the cigarettes in the same grocery store that he stole them from? That'd be gangster.
He's selling them to underage kids, of course. A little
yeah,
markup.
but I mean, you literally stole them from that grocery store and then using their parking lot to sell them secondhand. That's pretty ballsy.
He don't give a shit.
Did you ever watch the Tom Green show back in the day? This just like spurred some funny.
Oh my
memory
God,
in
it's
head.
been forever. I do remember that show.
Do you remember that
Yes.
show, Tom Green show on MTV, like in the
Yeah,
90s?
so off the wall.
There was one there. Yeah, there was one bit that stands out that I still think about and laugh all the time. He had a bit where he followed around a pizza guy, and he had like his own. He had like a plain cheese pizza, and like he'd follow the pizza guy to the door of the house that the pizza guy was delivering the pizza to, and then he'd start trying to undercut the pizza guy to the customer. He's like, the customer's like, he literally had a tackle box filled with toppings, and he's like, whatever you want on the pizza, I got it right here. The pizza guy actually, like, at one point, the pizza guy got so mad that he like grabbed something out of his trunk, like I forget, it was a hammer or something, was like started chasing him around with it. It was fucking hilarious. Look that shit up on YouTube. It's classic.
I will. That's good.
So, back on track. The police traced the car to Speck and issued a warrant for his arrest for burglary on March 8th. An arrest was his 42nd in Dallas, would mean another prison term, likely 10 plus years at this time. And so when he returned home, he found his mom and his sister told him, you need to get the hell out of here. The police are on to you, and you're going away for good this time. So on March 9th, 1966, Speck's sister Carolyn drove him to the Dallas bus depot where he caught a bus to Chicago, Illinois, to meet up with another sister of his. So his family just continually is covering for him.
Yeah.
This time they get him out of town and give him a place to go to in another city. Upon arriving to Chicago, his other sister Martha Thornton picked him up at the airport, where he stayed with her and her family for a few days before returning to his boyhood hometown of Monmouth, Illinois. There in Monmouth, he initially stayed with some old family friends, and his brother Howard, who was a carpenter in Monmouth, found him a job sanding plasterboard for another Monmouth carpenter. And he was doing well, actually. His brother was praised for finding a guy to do such good work sanding plasterboard. I guess people didn't like to do it because it was so mindless. Right. You're just sitting there sanding boards all day, and either people would get lazy with it, or they would want out just because you got to do something more interesting with their day.
Yeah, I could see that. But he wasn't.
But he was doing quite well.
He wasn't bad at most of the jobs he had, at least at first.
No,
it was like once he started
right.
drinking on the job, it seems like where it kind of started to dip.
He's just one of those guys where he wasn't going to do anything for very long. He needed constant excitement.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Like many serial killers we've covered. Right. Things were going well for a bit, and Speck had made his brother look good due to the fine work sanding plasterboard. However, Speck became enraged when he learned that his ex-wife had remarried 2 days after she was granted a divorce on March 16th, 1966. This caused him to kind of lose his shit. He quit his job and moved to the Christie Hotel in downtown Monmouth on March 25th, where he spent most of his time in the downtown taverns. So he's lashing out, upset about his ex-wife finding a new man. At the end of March, Speck and some Monmouth acquaintances on a bar hopping trip to Gulfport, Illinois, were detained overnight by police after Speck reportedly threatened a man in a tavern restroom with his knife. Sounds about right. That sounds like pretty much a nightly occurrence.
Yeah.
I'm surprised he didn't stab this guy at least. He only threatened him with a knife. Then on April 3rd, Miss Virgil Harris, a 65-year-old Monmouth divorcee, returned home at 1 a.m. to her home to find a burglar in her house brandishing a knife. It was a 6-foot-tall white man who was very polite and spoke very softly with a southern drawl. The man blindfolded her, tied her up, raped her, ransacked her house, and stole the $2.50 she had earned babysitting that evening. So this was obviously Richard Speck, and this is like his first...
This is his first victim, right?
First like kind of random victim. I mean, he had raped his wife, as we mentioned, when she refused sex to him while she was pregnant and whatnot. So, I mean, he was no stranger to forcible sex with an unwilling participant. Right. But this was a just a complete random break into someone's home, and this is kind of like where the things became unlocked, and he starts going on this just rampage. A week later, Mary Kay Pierce, a 32-year-old barmaid at a bar called Frank's Place in downtown Monmouth, was last seen leaving the tavern at 12:45 a.m., and this would be his first murder victim, who we alluded to at the beginning of the story. On April 9th, she was reported missing, and on April 13th, her body was found that day in an empty hog house behind the tavern, having died from a blow to her abdomen that ruptured her liver. This shit was crazy. So he was at this bar hanging out. this Mary Kay Pierce, who was the bartender. She'd been doing this forever. She knew how to handle herself, and she had allegedly made a joke at Richard's expense in front of several people at the bar. She then later found Richard sulking in the parking lot. So he went out into the parking lot, was pissed off that she'd kind of made fun of him in front of everyone. Yeah. She came out and like put her arm around him to apologize. She'd done this many times. She knew how to handle patrons, drunk people, and all that. She came out and like, "What's wrong, Richard? I'm sorry, I made a joke about you." And the way the book described it is he just turned and landed a devastating punch to her, what ended up being her liver, and actually this supposedly killed her. He punched her in the liver, which actually damaged her liver so bad that she was like coughing blood, and he then took her into the hog pen that he had actually, this is crazy, he had built this hog pen. This was like his first big job. So you remember his brother got him the carpenter job sanding the plasterboard.
Right, yeah.
He was doing so well at that the boss of that construction company said, "You know what, why don't we have you try side jobs or whatever?" And this bar that he'd been hanging out at needed a hog pen built. And so they actually hired him to build this hog pen. He did a good job. They were proud. This is like 2 weeks prior to this event happening. And he ended up putting his first murder victim in the hog pen that he had built, which didn't look good on his part as far as he became a suspect right away. He's the guy that was hanging out at the bar. He had built this hog pen, and that's where she's found.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of adding up. He may have even built it with that in mind. Shit.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, it was probably something that when he realized that he was going to kill her, when it came to that, the first thing he thought of was the pin that he built, at least to store her. Even if it wasn't premeditated from, I'm going to kill someone and put him in that hog pen tonight, it was like, well, there's that hog pen that I built.
Exactly.
When it happened. Speck had frequented Frank's place, and the empty hog house was one of several that he had helped build in the preceding month. So Monmouth police briefly questioned him about Pierce's death when he showed up to collect his final carpentry paycheck on April 15th. They asked him to stay in town for further questioning. So he was a suspect, just one of many. And they said, stay in town in case we have to come question you again. And they let him go. However, when police showed up at the Christie Hotel on April 19th to continue their questioning of Speck, they found that he had left the hotel hours earlier and carrying his suitcases, saying he was going to the laundromat, but instead he had left town. So this obviously made him the main suspect because he's now ditching town.
That's right.
A search of his room turned up a radio and costume jewelry that Mrs. Virgil Harris had reported missing from her house, as well as items reported missing in 2 other local burglaries in the last month.
Why wouldn't you take those?
So the older woman that he'd... Keepsakes, probably? I mean, we've seen that.
No,
with
why
killers.
wouldn't he take those with him when he fled the hotel? I kept struggling with that. I'm like, did he want them to know? He wanted them to know who he was. That's the only thing I can come.
Seems like it, right? Because that obviously implemented him into several other crimes that he didn't. He could have easily just either trashed that shit or took it with him. He took it from the people's house that he burglarized in the first place for a reason, because he either had value, fiscally, or it had value to him as like a keepsake.
Yeah, I understand that, but I mean, leaving the hotel, you're not coming back. Throw those in the suitcase, brother.
Yeah, that's odd. I don't know. He must have been. He wanted to implement himself in those crimes. Yeah. On April 19th, 1966, Speck returned to stay at his sister Martha's apartment in the old Irving Park neighborhood of Chicago, where she lived with her husband, Gene Thornton, and their 2 teenage daughters. That's something you want, right? Your crazy criminal brother, rapist, assault monger, living with your young daughters.
Yeah. I mean, if you buy it, that's what he is.
That's some real trust. Yeah, she must have been buying into her younger brother being not the animal that everyone thought he was. Martha had worked as a registered nurse in pediatrics before she was married, and her husband Gene worked nights as a railroad switchman. Speck told them an unbelievable story about having to leave Monmouth after refusing to sell narcotics for a crime syndicate there. So yeah, he made up this whole bullshit story.
That's what I'm saying. He's feeding them full of shit, and their family. You're going to give family the benefit of the doubt if you give anybody the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. Gene Thornton, the husband who had served in the U.S. Navy, thought the U.S. Merchant Marine might provide a suitable occupation for his unemployed brother-in-law who was staying with him. He's probably just trying to get him a job so he can get him the hell out of his house with his young daughters and whatnot.
Nobody's more motivated than the brother-in-law.
Exactly. He took Speck. Yeah, he's driving him to these jobs. He's like, here, get a fucking job.
He's like paying
And
the
he would,
employer.
like,
Listen, I'll give
kind
you
of-
$50 if you just hire the fucking guy.
Right. Get him out of my house. And also Speck, the book described like this relationship, this dichotomy between him and his brother-in-law, and how his brother-in-law was demeaning him all the time. Speck really hated him, just felt like he was another guy that looked down on him.
Right.
He took Speck on April 25th to the U.S. Coast Guard's office to apply for a letter of authority to work as an apprentice seaman. The application required being fingerprinted, photographed, and having a physical examination by a physician. Speck found work immediately after obtaining a letter of authority, joining a 33-member crew on a bulk ore lake freight liner, and on April 30th, 1966. So he gets his job he's going to be working the seas.
Right.
And his first voyage on the Clarence B. Randall was brief, as he was stricken with appendicitis on May 3rd and almost died. And the documentary we watched it A&E documentary, and they didn't they interview a guy that was on the ship with him that found him, and he was like on the verge of death.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
And
he found
it
him.
was kind of like, yeah, that's what everybody. That's the common narrative. It's like, damn, why couldn't he have just died from the appendicitis? Just
So close.
Wait a little. You're out on the sea. There's an excuse, to not get him back quickly. It's kind of like, oh, well, we
I
didn't
don't
find
know
him.
what's wrong with him.
But they didn't know what he was going to be. They didn't know anything about him. So they're just trying to save this guy who's dying.
I know. I like to think that I would have done the same thing. We would all done the same thing.
Yeah, of course. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So he would end up being evacuated by the U.S. Coast Guard helicopter to St. Joseph's Hospital in Hancock, where he had an emergency appendectomy. Speck, at this point, was in the hospital for a few days and was eating up the attention he received from the female nurses during his stay at the hospital. There's a little foreshadowing there. Mm-hmm. After he was discharged from the hospital, Speck returned to stay with his sister Martha and her family in Chicago to recuperate. And on May 20th, he rejoined the crew of the Clarence B. Randall, on which he served until June 14th, when he got drunk and quarreled with one of the boat's officers and was put ashore on June 15th. That was a matter of time.
Oh, of course.
I mean, you're stuck on a boat with Richard Speck during this time. It's just a matter of time before he gets too drunk and fights somebody or finds something to stab you with. I feel like it just intensifies it, Being on a boat, whatever your personality is, you're going to be a little bit more of that.
Yeah, I think so.
Don't you think?
Can't get away.
There's no escape. Like, you're stuck.
Yeah, there's no alone time. There's no just you time. There's always people around, and you're working too.
Yeah, I think that should be a rule. Like, you should never be on a boat with anyone you don't like really enjoy or trust. Kind of like you don't do mushrooms with a stranger. You shouldn't go on boats with strangers.
Right.
You're stuck out in the fucking water with them. There's no escape.
Exactly. Just don't go on boats for no reason.
That's why I'm anti-cruise.
I'm anti-cruise
for that
too,
reason. I don't want
man.
to be on a fucking ship in the middle of the ocean with a bunch of
Yeah.
people.
What?
I'm with Bill Burr. We should sink them. That's how we should minimize the Earth's
Right.
population.
Why do we want to go on cruises for? You're just riding around on a boat. You could go to a hotel, and that has all that stuff, or a casino, and then you can also leave that place if you want to, and have the same experience, maybe better, because you're on
And you're
land.
not getting the highest end food and stuff on cruise ships. They're getting the cheap shit because they got to feed so many people.
Yeah, all the alcohol is probably watered down.
Yeah, if you're gonna if you want to do a cruise to a certain city or whatever, because that city's cool, like just go to the city and like Uber around and go to real restaurants and whatnot. That's the way to do
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Don't do cruises.
Anyways,
Cruises.
all right. So you heard it here. The True Crime Guys podcast is anti-cruise.
That's right.
Tom Cruise as
Yeah.
well.
Fuck you, Carnival.
Overrated. All right. Speck then traveled by train to Houghton, Michigan, staying at the Douglas House to visit Judy Lakanimi, a 28-year-old nurse's aide going through a divorce whom he had befriended at the St. Joseph's Hospital. So we mentioned how he was, enjoying all the attention while he was getting treated for the burst appendix.
Right.
And one of these nurses that he had met was this Judy, this 28-year-old nurse's aide. So he actually, I guess, had gotten her number while she was there and actually went to meet up with her. And on June 27th, after Judy gave him $80 to help him until he found work, that's a lot of money back then. Holy shit. She just gave him $80. Speck left again to stay with his sister Martha and her family in Chicago for the next 2 weeks. On June 30th, now we're getting into a lot of detail on his day-to-day movements at this time because it's leading up to the big event, the night,
Exactly.
the infamous night in Chicago in that
Right, and it's
townhome.
important to
On
know
June
how
30th
this machine gets ramped up for this event.
How this transfolds, what led to this. On June 30th, his brother-in-law, Gene, drove Speck to the National Maritime Union, the NMU Hiring Hall in the Jeffrey Manor neighborhood of South Deering, Chicago, to file his paperwork for a seaman's card. Now, this is important, this area, because it was 1 block east of a 6 attached 2-story brick townhouses, 3 of which were occupied by South Chicago Community Hospital senior student nurses and Filipino exchange registered nurses, 8 of whom who lived in the easternmost townhouse at 2319 East 100th Street, just 150 feet from the NMU hiring hall. So this is an unfortunate thing that happened where this hiring hall that his brother-in-law kept taking him to, I imagine he'd wander around after going to the hiring hall, waiting for his brother-in-law or whatever, and he just saw an opportunity here. He saw these townhouses with all these young nurses and kind of became infatuated with it and saw it as his, an easy target to, especially the specific building that was kind of away from the other ones where you could commit such a crime.
Right.
And on Friday, July 8th, 1966, his brother-in-law, Gene, drove Speck to the NMU hiring hall yet again to pick up his seaman's card and register for a berth on a ship. Speck lost out that day to a seaman with more seniority for a berth on the SS Flying Spray and returned to his sister Martha's apartment for the weekend. So he's pissed. He keeps kind of getting passed over on yet again, and his inferiority complex is just getting worse and worse.
Well, I don't think he's getting passed over. I mean, I think it's his reputation is preceding him is all this is. I mean, why would you take this felon? And I mean, he's also been kicked off the last ship, drunken, and especially for what he was kicked off for, violence.
Oh, for sure. They have records of that. Especially maybe they don't know about his whole criminal record prior, but they definitely know the last ship he was on, he got kicked off for being a fucking belligerent idiot.
I mean, you can join the union all you want, but they're not miracle workers. I mean, they're there for you, but I mean, damn.
Yeah. He probably would only get a spot if there was no one else applying for that specific spot.
Exactly.
They're going to pick whoever else every time.
Yeah.
And by Monday, July 11th, Speck had outstayed his welcome with his sister Martha and her family. And after packing his bags and again being driven by his brother-in-law Gene to the NMU hiring hall to await berth on a ship, Speck stayed that evening at Pauline's rooming house a mile away in the Vets Park neighborhood of South Deering, Chicago. So now he's hanging around the area of the NMU hiring hall and the area of the townhomes where all these nurses are. And he's kind of got nothing to do. He's waiting to find a spot on a ship. His brother-in-law and his sister are kind of done with him. And it kind of leads to this event. On Tuesday, July 12th, he returned to the NMU hiring hall and in mid-afternoon received an assignment on a Sinclair's oil tanker, SS Sinclair Great Lakes, a 30-minute drive away in East Chicago, Indiana. But when he arrived there, he found his spot had already been taken. Yet again, he was passed over on, and he was driven back to, by then, the closed NMU hiring hall. So he's taken back to the NMU hiring hall, and now it's closed. Right. He's got to find something to do again. He did not have enough money for a rooming house, so he dropped off his bags at 6 blocks east at the Manor Shell filling station and slept in an unfinished house just off of 103rd Street. On Wednesday, July 13th, after picking up his bags and checking in at the NMU hiring hall, angry at being sent to a non-existent assignment, he talked for 30 minutes in the car with his sister Martha and her husband Gene across the street from the townhouses where those nurses lived. And it's all leading up to this event. At 10:30 a.m., tired of waiting on the NMU hiring hall for a job, and with $25 his sister had given him, Speck left and walked a mile and a half east on East 100th Street to check in at the Shipyard Inn, which was a rooming house. So he's got room for the night. He spent the rest of the day drinking in a nearby tavern before accosting at knife point Ella Mae Hooper, a 53-year-old woman who had spent the day drinking at the same tavern as Speck. It just seemed like, well, how many drinks in before the knife comes out? Like every time. Right. It's unbelievable. It's just his go-to move.
It's just like what he wants to do. He's looking for a reason to pull that knife out.
Right? Speck took her to his room at the Shipyard Inn, raped her, and stole her black .22 caliber Rome revolver, $16 mail order Saturday night special. So he now has a .22 caliber gun, and this is also going to help him in this major crime to come. After dinner at nearby Kay's Pilot House, Speck returned to drink at the Shipyard Inn's Tavern until 10:20 p.m. when he left dressed entirely in black, armed with a pocket knife, a hunting knife, and Ella Mae Hooper's revolver, and walked a mile and a half west on East 100th Street to the nurse's townhouse at 2319 East 100th Street, the infamous location of these murders. And so let's get into them. It's all led to this. At 11 p.m. on July 13th, 1966, Richard Speck broke into the townhouse. It was functioning as a dormitory for several young student nurses, some of whom were Filipino. Speck raped and then killed 8 young women, Gloria Davy, Patricia Matusik, Nina Shamel, Pamela Wilkening, Susanna Ferris, Marianne Jordan, Merlita Gargulo, and Valentina Pezian. So 8 women. He would later claim that he was high on both alcohol and drugs. How he did this was he held the women in the house for hours at gunpoint, methodically leading them out of one room, one by one, stabbing or strangling them to death when they were isolated, then finally raping and strangling his last victim, Gloria Davy. Gloria Davy, he treated differently because she had kind of pissed him off. I believe that was the one who spit in his face and said that she was going to identify him in court for this. And so he kind of like held on to her, saved her for last, essentially. However, he made one huge mistake in that he didn't keep a great count. He was probably hammered, and he didn't keep a great count on every woman that was in there. He thought he had the right number, but one was able to sneak underneath the bed. One woman named Cora Amoro escaped because she managed to wiggle under a bed while Speck was out of the room with one of his victims. And under there, she stayed during these horrific events, seeing her friends one by one get murdered. He may have lost count, or he may have known that there were 8 women living in the townhouse, but only had been unaware that a 9th student nurse was spending the night there. So he thought he had all 8 accounted for, but there was actually 9. Amaro stayed hidden under there until almost 6 a.m., and when she emerged, she climbed out of the northeast bedroom window into a large ledge, screaming, "They're all dead. My friends are all dead."
God, that was...
And that's when all hell broke loose.
She dealt with that, man, for the rest of her life.
Oh, man, right? She had to have had that same mentality that a lot of, like, soldiers and stuff have, where it's like, why did I live?
Can you imagine just being...
like seeing all of your friends get killed?
Just being huddled under that bed, just praying to whatever you believe in with all you got.
So scary.
I mean, there's nowhere to go.
Right. Yep. Just hoping you don't see him look under there and have that moment. So yeah, this became the biggest story in Chicago for a long time. This is just this crazy, like, who would do this? This some monster broke into this place and killed all these promising young women. Lieutenant Emil Geese headed to the identification section of Chicago Police Department and compared and identified a smudged fingerprint that was found at the murder scene to another provided by the FBI, which belonged to Richard Speck. So they were able to, even back then, they were able to acquire a fingerprint, and because he was on record for all these crimes, and also as a seaman, he got identified again. He had to put his fingerprint to get that job, so his fingerprint was all over records everywhere. Right. And when they were able to tie him to that, and then also they had a living witness.
Yeah.
Sergeant Hugh Granison assisted with the comparison, and later that morning, Senior Examiner Burton Burke had found a better fingerprint on a door at the scene. Speck's picture and description were plastered all over the newspapers as this was a crime that shook the city of Chicago. So it's just a matter of time. I mean, he now knows he has to go into hiding, and when he was kind of chilling at bars like a mile away from the crime scene, but when he heard in the news that there was a living witness, that's when he panicked and tried to get out of town. Well, he didn't try to get out of town, but he kind of went into hiding. He went into was he like staying at a homeless shelter or something? Yeah,
I think he was actually staying on the street, is the way that the documentary had described it. He was just trying to blend in.
Up until he found out that there was a living witness, and he panicked. I think he went to like a bad part of town and was staying in a homeless shelter, trying to kind of blend in. 2 days after the murder, Speck was identified by a drifter named Claude Lunsford. Speck, Lunsford, and another man had been drinking the evening of July 15th on the fire escape of the Star Hotel at 617 West Madison. And on July 16th, Lunsford recognized a sketch of the murderer in the evening paper and phoned the police at 9:30 p.m. after finding Speck in his room at the Star Hotel. The police, however, did not respond to the call, although their records showed it had been made. Luckily, though, Speck then attempted suicide, and the Star Hotel desk clerk phoned in an emergency around midnight. So he was found bleeding out. He had cut his wrists, and before he passed away, a worker there found him and called the police. And they just still didn't know. Like, they just thought a man, attempted suicide, and they took him to the hospital. It was actually a nurse in the hospital, a male nurse, who pulled up his sleeve and saw the tattoo, "Born to Raise Hell," and knew right away. He said, "This is the fella that committed those crimes."
Hey, you know what? I was just thinking, why do you think the police didn't respond to that call? Because of the drifter making the call? Maybe he didn't have any credibility?
Maybe, or maybe it was such a big story that they just had so much information coming in all the time that they just...
But if it's such a big story, wouldn't you follow any lead, especially one that's like, "Hey, I see the guy in his hotel room, like he's right there."
Right. Probably it was the person calling. Yeah, like you said, a drifter. They just didn't give him any clout.
Credibility in their eyes.
Yeah. So the police were called by the hospital, who discovered that it was indeed the man that had committed those murders, and Speck was arrested. Pre-trial, Speck was evaluated by multiple mental health experts and deemed competent and fit to stand trial.
Should have been.
Oh, of course, yeah, he was totally aware of what he was doing and how it was wrong. Speck's jury trial began April 3rd, 1967 in Peoria, Illinois, with a gag order on the press, so not a lot of information leaking out. In court, Speck was dramatically identified by the sole surviving student nurse, Cora Amaro. I love that part of the story, how, like, they were worried, like prosecutors and stuff were worried that she would be too nervous in his presence to pick him out. And not only did she point at him, but she actually stood up, walked over to him, and within like a foot pointed directly at his face and said, "That's the man that did this."
Hell yeah. She'd been waiting to do that.
Beautiful.
Boy. I know
Right.
she had.
Yeah. Lieutenant Geese testified regarding the fingerprints that were matched. He provided the scientific evidence that the prosecution needed for conviction, and with Amaro's testimony, placed the evidence against Speck beyond a reasonable doubt with persuaded jurors. And on April 15th, after only 49 minutes of deliberation, the jury found Speck guilty and recommended the death penalty.
Good.
And on the day of sentencing, on June 5th, he was sentenced to die in the electric chair, but granted an immediate stay pending automatic appeal to the Illinois Supreme Court, which upheld its conviction and death sentence on November 22nd, 1968. So he's likely going to die in the chair, in Old Sparky, essentially. However, as we've seen time and time again, that's handed down and then taken away. On June 28th, 1971, the Supreme Court, citing their June 3rd, 1968 decision in Witherspoon versus Illinois, upheld Speck's conviction but reversed his death sentence because more than 250 potential jurors were unconstitutionally excluded from his jury because of their contentious or religious scruples against capital punishment. The case was remanded back to the Illinois Supreme Court for sentencing. A bunch of red tape and all that stuff, but essentially his death sentence was taken away. He was sentenced to what would end up being 400 to 1,200 years in prison, or 8 consecutive life sentences of 50 to 150 years. So he's never going to get out. Yeah, that'll do it. And then he was denied parole in 7 minutes at his first parole hearing on September 15th, 1976, and at 6 subsequent hearings in 77, 78, 81, 84, 87, and 90. How anyone could ever think he was going to get out of parole after what he had done.
So then what happened to him,
and his whole track record. So then we get to the fun stuff we talked about at the beginning. His life in prison was quite fascinating. While incarcerated at the Statesville Correctional Center at Crest Hill, Illinois, Speck was given the nickname Birdman after the film Birdman of Alcatraz because he kept a pair of sparrows that had flown into his cell as pets. And that reminds me of the scene from Mindhunter. They actually featured Richard Speck, and an actor played him. And there was the whole scene where he had the bird and he was loving on it and everything, and then they pissed him off, and to prove a point that he didn't care about life or have any remorse, he throws the bird into a fan, killing it. That was a pretty intense scene in that show. I think they captured his essence pretty well. I think so too. But I think that was honestly, I don't buy that he was this no feeling monster. You know what I mean? For lack of a better phrase to say, but I feel like he was all about his image and he wanted to portray that. I feel like he did have potentially remorse. And you talked about how maybe he was punishing himself by
I think that's
behavior
a good
in prison.
Possibility, because why not just kill yourself? Or if you're that afraid of it, I mean, have somebody. He's got to have one or two people he trusts in prison. Have somebody else kill you then. If you can't do it, it's better than It's better than going through what he's going through, in my opinion.
Right.
But like I said, maybe he's punishing himself, or maybe he really does have the will to live. Maybe he's accepted it and is like, this is my life now. It's this or nothing.
Yeah. Speck customarily refused all media requests, but granted one prison interview to Bob Greene in 1978, where he told Greene that he had read Greene's column in the Chicago Tribune. In this interview, Speck confessed to the murders for the first time publicly and said that he thought he would get out of prison between now and the year 2000, at which time he'd hoped to open up his own grocery store business.
How the hell are you gonna do that? How the hell?
All right, bro.
What in the world makes him think?
Hey, you gotta have hope. You gotta have hope, you know.
But he doesn't have any experience in that.
You gotta have
like, you're not even gonna try to do like.
He had experience robbing them and selling their cigarettes in the parking lot.
You're not gonna like start your own fishing boat, or maybe be a painter or a plaster wall installer. You know what I mean? And like now it's sheetrock, but back then I guess they were doing all plaster. I mean,
right?
You're gonna open a grocery store? Did you just pick this out of the clouds? That's bullshit.
Yeah. You gotta have hopes and dreams, man.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
He told Greene that one of his pleasures in prison was getting high. When Greene asked him if he compared himself to celebrity killers like John Dillinger, Speck replied, "Me, I'm not like Dillinger or anybody else. I'm freakish."
You're not special, bro.
No. Speck said that when he killed the nurses, he had no feelings, but things had changed. I had no feelings at all that night. They said there was blood all over the place. I can't remember. It felt like nothing. I'm sorry as hell for those girls and for their families and for me. If I had to do it all over again, it would be a simple house burglary. Specs, he can't even say that he just wouldn't show up at all. I just rob him. That's all. Speck's final thought for the American people was, just tell them to keep their hatred for me. I know how it keeps up their morale, and I don't know what I'd do without it.
Fair enough.
So, and then there's the prison video, which is so fucking bizarre. It might be it's up there with the most bizarre videos I've ever seen, and that's saying a lot because I've seen some shit on the internet. But man, this prison video, you got to look it up. He is in a cell with some other men, and he's changed he's obviously on some hormones because he's grown breasts. And he is their woman, essentially, in prison, and they're using him as he would use, his poor wife back in the day. They're just kind of taking him as they want him, and at one point they ask him, like, you got them blue panties on? And he's like, yep. And it's just so creepy, man.
It's very creepy.
I don't know how to... And the documentary's acting like... The A&E documentary we watched, they were kind of insinuating that he was enjoying this lifestyle and he was having the time of his life because he's, they had this big pile of cocaine in their fucking cell. Like, what the hell kind of prison sentence is this? So they're snorting lines, and he had been kind of given privileges throughout the prison by becoming like a painter, and like he had a kind of like free roam of the prison. So he was brewing his own alcohol using like raisins and different fruits, like fermenting.
Yeah, apparently he would put them in
and
the drainage cleanouts. He would put raisins and apples in jars and seal them up and put them in drainage cleanouts, like in the showers and stuff. And then they would just sit down there and ferment.
Yeah,
I mean that's desperation right there. But hey, it's called, what is it called? Prison brew or something like that. What they call it?
Yeah. Yeah. So I honestly feel like this is a satisfying end because I think he was doing this just because he had no other choice. They were making him be their bitch, essentially.
Yeah.
And it's a great karmic justice, in my opinion. I could see it in his eyes. He was not having a good time being taken advantage of like that. So pretty funny, interesting. And from behind the camera, during this prison video, a prisoner asked Speck why so they're like kind of interviewing him on video, the prisoners that are in there with him, and they asked why he killed the nurses. He shrugged and jokingly said it just wasn't their night. Asked how he felt about himself in the years since, he said, like I always felt, had no feeling. If you're asking me if I felt sorry, no.
Yeah, well, I mean, you might as well say that now.
Yeah, he had to put on that.
Absolutely.
He always had to kind of put on that bad boy image.
What he has left of it.
So it's... Yeah, exactly. So those are the final fun years of his life, which led to his death. Speck died of a heart attack at 6:05 a.m. on December 5th, 1991, one day before his 50th birthday, at Silver Cross Hospital in Joliet. He had been taken to Silver Cross after complaining of chest pains and nausea at Statesville Correctional Center. And that was it. That was the end of Richard Speck.
Wow.
Quite a
That's
case.
another satisfying ending, man. Not as, I don't know. It's just as satisfying as Wayne Nance. Like you said earlier, it's different.
Yeah, just
It's
different.
That's all. We can work with that.
Yeah.
We can work with that.
All right, guys. Well, that was Richard Speck. We hope you enjoyed it. You want to get to some shout-outs?
Yeah. Well, let's do some Oh My Gaia first. You want to?
Oh, my Gaia.
Yeah. You get those shout-outs
Oh
ready
My
while
Gaia.
I'm informing people of the greatest natural deodorant company known to man. You hear me? And women, of course.
I hear you.
Oh My Gaia. Oh My Gaia is an innovative, all-natural deodorant, fragrance, and beard oil company specializing in paraben and aluminum-free products. Their innovative line of deodorants inhibit the growth of odor-causing bacteria while maintaining effectiveness. At Oh My Gaia, they use only all-natural, paraben, and aluminum-free organic ingredients. Guys, she has tons of scents to choose from over there, from vanilla, cherry almond, sandalwood, lavender, lemongrass, Egyptian musk, coconut, Egyptian musk, one of my favorites, dreamsicle, leather, lumberjack, that's a great one, honeysuckle, fireside. We have our very own scent called True Crime Pine. It was made just for the True Crime guys. And because you guys are True Crime Guys listeners, you can get 15% off your order by using the code word CREEPER, CREEPER, the code word CREEPER. And that's at ohmygaia.com, OHMYGAIA.com, or at shop_ohmygaia on Instagram. Thanks, guys.
Try that shit.
You need to. You know, and it takes...
Don't.
The more I use it, the more my body gets used to it, the better, the longer it lasts, I feel like. And also, I feel like the less I have to use it. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah, it's like your body
Because I mean,
adjusts.
I also don't, also in full honesty, I don't shower as much in the winter. I don't think anybody should. I mean, you don't sweat as much. I don't think it's necessary to shower every single day and wipe and wash off all of your body's natural oils and shit, you know? So maybe that's coming into play. I don't know. I feel like I got a good routine with as far as hair and skin going on right now. I'm feeling good.
All right, man. I skip a day every now and then, I guess.
I just don't think that you should. I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends on what kind of soaps you're using too.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know if you've looked
Well,
into that.
I do.
I know you're pretty in the know in most parts of your life. Maybe you're not in the soap category.
I do have a special soap that I use because I do jujitsu. So you have to have to use like an intense. I get Defense soap. Shout out to Defense soap. It's like super fucking active antibacterial shit to where you don't get ringworm, you don't get like all that shit. So.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so you don't get infections or
Yeah. You can't use that shit
From other
all
people.
the time though, because it'll dry you out real bad and stuff. So I use it only after class. That's about it. But yeah, man.
You should use it like before class, shouldn't you?
No, you use it, dude, after when you just got a bunch of other dudes sweat all over you. It's gross.
I got you. I thought it was defense. I thought you were saying like defense. You know,
Right.
It's better to install your defense beforehand. But I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I hope the Niners played defense
both.
during, not after the game. That's for the- I see what you're saying.
So you're gonna shower while you're
Right.
fighting. I got you.
I see what you're saying. All right, let's do some shout outs. Thank you to everyone who has gone and rated and reviewed, or just gone and click 5 stars on iTunes if you don't want to write a thing. But if you do want to shout out, you got to write something or even just put some fire emojis. So I want to say thank you to Chris W31, Philly Boy 1962 said we're brilliant. R now said True Crime Guys are my go-to podcast. Right on.
Word.
As I thought, said love Michael's intros, 5 stars. Right on. We love hearing that too, because once in a while people will shit on his intros, and we need to hear all the people that love them, because I think that's way more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Lori Vep said must listen, 5 stars. Thank you. JBez0901. Frumpy 1980 said great, 5 stars. Thank you. GA Girl 31312. Love the show, 5 stars. Thank you. Jez the Pez 85. Love your musical intros, 5 stars. Patron here. Love your shit. Right on. Thank you, Jez the Pez. Bistits Boo, 5 stars. Fire emojis. Thank you. Harley Nightrod 94. Love the show, 5 stars. Benny Vero, only podcast that tries to be funny and is. No, that's not true. There's some funny ones out there, guys. But we do appreciate it.
Right.
Ultra Washington said, great, 5 stars. Thank you. Kathleen Nomad, thank you. Aylin Daw, thank you, 5 stars. Nelly R, please release your Dennis Nilsson episode to us freeloaders. No can do. Pony up the $2 there, Nelly. Neely R.
That's right.
Someday we'll probably release it if you're patient enough.
Listen. Yeah, probably. Hang in there.
And 2 more. Malalalali.
Nice.
Said, these guys rocks, 5 stars. It's like talking true crime with my friends. Right on. And Neg9 said, just want a shout out. Listen to you guys all the time while at work or during my commute. I appreciate the hard work. Thank you. Thank you for the 5-star review.
There's actually one more.
Oh, I missed one?
I'm looking here on iTunes.
Okay.
M.Rock, 5 stars, and then just put fire emojis.
Hell yeah.
So,
thanks, M-Rock.
appreciate that. Oh, yeah.
All right, guys.
All right, dude.
That was a fun one. Back again next week with a freeloader on Super Bowl Sunday.
Hell yeah. So be on the lookout for that. Well, by the Wednesday after, of course.
Of course. Oh, right. All right. Check out all of our social media at True Crime Guys on Instagram, at True Crime Guys on Twitter, Facebook. We have a private Facebook group run by a couple of great creepers, Michelle K and Chris Sharp. Check that out.
That's right.
Even though I never know what's going on there because I don't have Facebook, but I hear it's popping.
That's right. Well, it's for true crime enthusiasts in general. Just get on there. People share funny true crime memes, jokes that your normal friends won't get.
Right.
You can share it in there with other
quote
true
unquote
crime
normal.
enthusiasts. Yeah,
Normies.
I was totally quoting. I'm sorry you couldn't see me,
Yeah.
but I was air quoting the shit out of that normal.
Good.
Yeah.
Normies are boring.
So, but yeah, and Patreon.com, dude. Patreon.com/True Crime Guys. Don't forget about that.
All right, y'all.
Tons of stuff.
Thanks again. Keep creeping. See you next week.
Yep. Keep creeping, guys.
True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder, get murder. True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder charming.